The Eucharist lies at the very heart of Catholic faith, a source of profound mystery and inexhaustible grace. It is a sacred tradition that has been passed down through generations, embodying the essence of divine love and sacrifice. More than a mere ritual, it is the true presence of Jesus Christ, body, blood, soul and divinity, given to nourish and transform us. This sacred act connects us directly to the Last Supper, where Jesus shared his body and blood with his disciples. This essay will explore the biblical foundations of this belief, drawing upon the words of Christ, who said, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." The witness of the early church, which steadfastly upheld this teaching despite persecution and hardship, and the foreshadowing found in the Old Testament, such as the manna from heaven that sustained the Israelites in the desert. The Eucharist is not merely a symbol, but a sacrament, a divine mystery that transcends human understanding, an outward sign instituted by Christ to give grace. It is a moment where heaven meets earth, and the faithful are drawn into the divine presence. Through the words of consecration spoken by the priest, bread and wine become the very body and blood of Christ, a miraculous transformation known as transubstantiation, offered again and again for the salvation of the world. Each Mass is a representation of Christ's one sacrifice on Calvary, making it present and effective for us today. This belief, rooted in Scripture and affirmed by the Church for centuries, invites us into the deepest mystery of our faith, calling us to a deeper communion with God and with one another. The roots of the Eucharist are firmly planted in the Last Supper, the Passover meal where Jesus shared his final hours with his disciples. This was no ordinary meal, it was imbued with deep significance, foreshadowing the sacrifice Jesus was about to make. As he broke bread and shared wine, he gave them a new commandment. "Do this in remembrance of me." Luke 22 and 19. This command, given within the context of a sacred meal, carries immense weight. Jesus did not simply ask his followers to recall his memory, he instituted a new covenant sealed in his blood. The bread and wine, blessed and shared, became the visible signs of his sacrifice, a tangible way to encounter his presence even after his death and resurrection. The heart of the Eucharistic belief lies in the words of Jesus himself. When he took the bread, he said, "Take, eat, this is my body," Matthew 26:26. Similarly, he took the cup and said, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." Matthew 26:27-28. These are not symbolic pronouncements, they are declarations of fact. Jesus uses the definitive is, leaving no room for metaphorical interpretation. He clearly identifies the bread and wine with his body and blood offered for the forgiveness of sins. This transformative act, the heart of the Eucharistic celebration, is the foundation of Catholic belief in the real presence. The Old Testament provides powerful prefigurements of the Eucharist, pointing towards the reality that God would feed his people with more than just earthly food. One such example is the manna, the bread sent from heaven to sustain the Israelites during their exodus from Egypt. Just as the manna nourished their bodies in the wilderness, so too does the Eucharist nourish our souls on our earthly pilgrimage. In John's Gospel, Jesus himself draws a parallel between the manna and his own flesh, stating, "I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever. And the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh." John 6:51. Here, Jesus identifies himself as the true bread from heaven, surpassing the manna of old. Section 5. Melchizedek's offering, a priestly prefiguration. Another striking prefigurement of the Eucharist is found in the figure of Melchizedek, the mysterious priest-king who appears in Genesis 14. Melchizedek blesses Abram and offers him bread and wine, Genesis 14:18. This act, while seemingly simple, carries profound Eucharistic significance. Melchizedek, whose name means King of Righteousness, is seen as a type of Christ, both priest and king. His offering of bread and wine anticipates the future sacrifice of Christ, who offers himself as both priest and victim in the Eucharist. This Old Testament encounter provides a glimpse into the sacrificial priesthood of Christ, prefiguring the Eucharistic celebration. Section 6 echoes in the Psalms, thirsting for God's presence. The Psalms, filled with yearning for God's presence, also offer echoes of Eucharistic longing. Psalm 42, for example, expresses a deep thirst for God, proclaiming, "As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, my God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God." Psalm 42, 1-2. This thirst for the living God finds its ultimate fulfillment in the Eucharist, where we encounter Christ in the most intimate way possible. The longing expressed in the Psalms finds its answer in the Eucharistic banquet, where our souls are truly satiated by the bread of life. Section 7, Early Church Fathers, witnesses to the true presence. The early Church Fathers played a crucial role in preserving and transmitting the teachings of the Apostles, ensuring that the core beliefs of Christianity were maintained through the ages. The belief in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist was not a later invention, it was the lived reality of the early Church. This profound belief was central to their worship and daily lives, reflecting their deep faith and understanding of Christ's teachings. The writings of the Church Fathers are replete with affirmations of this truth, demonstrating the continuity of belief from the time of the Apostles. These texts provide invaluable insights into the early Christian community's practices and beliefs, showing a direct link to the teachings of Jesus and his apostles. Ignatius of Antioch, a disciple of the Apostle John, wrote in the 1st century, "I desire the bread of God, the heavenly bread, the bread of life, which is the flesh of Jesus Christ." Letter to the Romans 7:3. His writings emphasize the sacredness of the Eucharist and its significance in the early Church. Similarly, Justin Martyr, writing in the 2nd century, stated that the Eucharist is not as common bread nor common drink do we receive these, but the food which is blessed by the prayer of his word. First Apology 66. His detailed descriptions of the Eucharistic celebration provide a clear picture of early Christian worship. These early witnesses confirm that the belief in the real presence was not a later development, but an integral part of Christian faith from the beginning. Their testimonies, preserved through centuries, offer a window into the unwavering faith of the early Christians and their profound reverence for the Eucharist, which continues to be a cornerstone of Christian worship today. Section 9, the Eucharist, source and summit of Christian life. For Catholics, the Eucharist is not merely a ritual or a remembrance. It is the source and summit of the Christian life, Lumen Gentium 11. It is the heart of our faith, the central act of worship, where we encounter the living Christ. It is the source because it is from the Eucharist that we receive the very life of Christ, his body, blood, soul, and divinity. This sacred meal nourishes our souls and strengthens our bond with God. It is the summit because all our prayers, works, and sacrifices find their ultimate expression in our union with Christ in the Eucharist. Every act of love and service we perform is elevated through this holy sacrament. This belief shapes every aspect of Catholic life, leading us to a deeper reverence for the Mass, a greater sense of community, and a more profound connection to our faith. A greater appreciation for the priesthood, recognizing the vital role priests play in bringing the Eucharist to the faithful, and a profound desire to receive Christ worthily in Holy Communion. This desire calls us to prepare our hearts and minds to approach the sacrament with humility and devotion. The Eucharist is not just an event we attend, it is a mystery we enter into, a sacred encounter that invites us to experience God's grace in a transformative way, a reality that transforms us from within, guiding us to live out our faith with renewed vigor and purpose. A call to deeper understanding. The Eucharist remains a source of ongoing wonder and contemplation. Whether one approaches it with the eyes of faith or with a more questioning spirit, the depth and richness of this sacrament invite us all to delve deeper into its mysteries. The biblical foundations, the witness of the early Church, and the transformative power experienced by countless believers throughout history all point towards the profound reality of Christ's presence in the Eucharist. As we conclude this exploration, let us be open to the mystery that unfolds before us in every Eucharistic celebration. May we approach the altar with hearts full of faith, ready to receive the gift of Christ himself, the bread of life that sustains us on our earthly pilgrimage.